Um, yeah, so hey everyone and welcome. Thank you for being here today. As Craig said, my name is Brittany Williams. I am the Director of Strategic Accounts here at Vital Interaction. And today we're going to talk about something that I really think every dermatology practice is navigating right now is how do you actually grow sustainably in a market that seems to be more competitive than ever? So the talk today, as Craig mentioned, driving patient acquisition and retention. But I want to be upfront with you. Acquisition without retention is a leaky bucket. And so today we're going to talk about both sides of that equation, bringing patients in as well as keeping them. So a little bit about me. I spent over 12 years in clinical and administrative healthcare roles, including 6 years as a practice administrator. I have sat in your seat. I know what it feels like when your schedule has gaps and when no-shows pile up. And, when you're not sure why patients aren't coming back. So I joined Vital Interaction in 2024, specifically because I believe in what automated, intelligent communication can do for practices. So that all said, let's dig in. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure that you leave today with things that you can actually use. So again, a little bit just about me here, kind of capped that already. But, in those, over a decade of working in healthcare, what I found over and over was that the clinical side of most practices was excellent. The providers were talented, the care was great, but the systems around the patient experience, the scheduling, the reminders, the follow-up, were often patched together and inconsistent. And so that's really what led me to Vital Interaction, because I believe that when those operational systems around a practice work well, it doesn't just help the business, but genuinely improves patient care. And so really that's what today's all about. And let's get into it. So before we go any further, let me be clear about what I hope that you walk away with today. First, I want you to understand how communication done well both actively supports growth and retention in a dermatology practice. These aren't separate problems as often thought. Second, I want to show you concrete ways to improve follow-up adherence and bring patients back once they have fallen out of care. In dermatology, this matters clinically, not just financially. Third, we'll look at specific strategies to reduce no-shows and keep patients engaged between their visits. And then finally, I want you to see how improving the patient experience isn't just a nice to have, it directly supports the long-term health of your practice. So these four things, they're all connected, they build on each other. And by the end of today, I hope that you'll see how. But first, kind of a quick pulse check. I love starting with this slide because it tells me a lot about where a room is. Usually, I'd have you raise your hand, but since I can't see any of you, just think about these in regard to your clinic, and they'll just help with the framework of what we're going to continue to talk about. So, just think through this right now. Which of you are offering any online scheduling or really just ease of access for your patients? The next one is, how many of you have a no-show rate that's under 10%? That's actually a benchmark that we'll talk about quite a bit later on. How many of you are hitting that? I'm curious. How many of you have a consistent recall or follow-up system? Not something ad hoc, just when a doctor's on PTO and staff have a little more time on their hands, but something really consistent. How many of you are actively managing patient feedback or reviews? This is one that people often don't think about as part of a growth strategy, but we'll cover later how it most absolutely is. The next one, how many of you are using any sort of digital education, whether that be video or text for patients? And we'll talk again more about this later too. So if you've checked all five, you're in great shape, and you're probably going to get some refinement ideas today. If you check 2 or 3, the idea is that you'll leave with a clear roadmap. And if you're at 0 or 1, don't worry, that's actually where the biggest opportunity lives. So wherever you are, I hope that you leave today finding that this talk is for you and what you need in your practice. So this is the foundational concept for everything that we'll discuss today. So spending a moment here in dermatology, whether you're more medical dermatology or cosmetic or a hybrid practice, there's often a temptation to focus almost entirely on new patient acquisition. More new patients mean more revenue, right? Here's the problem. If you are retaining patients and if you're not retaining patients, then you're constantly running to fill a bucket that has a hole in it. And so think about your typical patient journey. They find you maybe through a referral or through Google. They come in for a visit. And then what happens? Are they coming back? Do they return for their annual skin check? Do they follow through on their treatment plan that was prescribed? In dermatology specifically, the stakes are high when patients don't follow up. A patient who has a suspicious lesion, who doesn't return for a biopsy result, a patient on a biologic who goes 6 months without a check-in, a patient whose acne is cleared, who you might never see again, but maybe they could benefit from ongoing care or even cosmetic services. So the cycle that I'm going to show you here on this next slide is going to talk about how to discover, engage, understand, return, and recommend. That's what a healthy practice looks like. When that cycle works, you're not just growing volume, but you're building relationships, and relationships are going to drive those outcomes. So let's now take a look at how this plays out visually. So this is what I refer to as the growth flywheel. Personally, I love this concept because it captures something important, that growth in a healthy practice is self-reinforcing. So when patients have a great experience, they come back. When they come back, they refer others. When new patients arrive through trusted referrals, they're already predisposed to trust you. And so they're easier to retain, and that cycle can just continue. But here's what can break the flywheel, and that's friction. Missed follow-ups, poor communication, a no-show that was never rescheduled, a patient who felt confused about their treatment plan, and they just stopped coming. So every one of these breakpoints is an opportunity, not a failure, an opportunity, because most of them are fixable with the right systems. So what I want you to hopefully take from this slide is that acquisition and retention aren't separate budget lines. They're part of one flywheel. And when you invest in communication and patient experience, you're really investing in that entire cycle. So I want to put this in concrete terms. When we talk about the patient journey in dermatology, we're talking about a series of moments where patients either stay engaged or they fall off. The first moment is discovery. How do they find you? Is it an online search, word of mouth, a primary care referral? The second is access. How easy is it to actually book an appointment? Is your website clear? Is scheduling frictionless, available outside of everyone's normal working hours? And then the visit itself. Are you setting proper patient expectations? Do they understand what's happening and why? And then after that, the moments after. So this is where most practices will lose patients, and that's the follow-up, the recall, that check-in in between, or the education. And these are moments where good communication systems can make an enormous difference in your practice. So I want you to think about your practice and ask yourself, where do patients drop off the most? This is usually where the biggest opportunity is. And so I want to start at the beginning of that journey, that online presence. And this is also a good opportunity for me to point out, there should be a Q&A section available here at the end. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address those, barring that we have the time appropriate for that. And so feel free, as we're talking through these, to just write down any questions. And if we can address them today, great. If not, I'd be happy to follow up with you after. So starting with online presence, this is often the first impression that a potential patient gets of your practice. before they ever walk through the door. So starting with your website, in dermatology practices, patients are often coming into you with concerns that feel personal and sometimes scary. A clear, fast, mobile-friendly website can significantly reduce anxiety before they even book. So what to expect pages are often underutilized if someone is coming in for a biopsy or cosmetic consultation, and your website tells them exactly what it looks like and what will happen, how long it takes, what to bring. You'll reduce no-shows. Anxious patients don't show up, but informed patients do, and they're engaged. Online scheduling is no longer optional in most cases. I know there are many practices that resist this, usually because of workflow concerns, but the data is clear. Patients who can book online, especially at 10 p.m. when your phones are closed, they book more and they cancel less. So now there's Google. Your Google business profile is your digital front door. If your hours are wrong, if you haven't added any recent photos, if you have unanswered reviews, that's a signal to potential patients that you may not be attentive. And then reviews. I know this is uncomfortable for a lot of providers, but a steady stream of genuine, positive reviews build trust with patients who've never met you. The goal isn't to chase stars, it's to make it easy for happy patients to share their experience. So next are community and referrals. So referrals in dermatology, they look a little bit different than in some other specialties, and I think it's worth, naming explicitly. Your referral sources can be broad. You're getting patients from primary care, urgent care, maybe from aesthetic partners, and you're also generating internal cross referrals, likely between your own providers to create, a full ecosystem. And so here's what I see breakdown most often is that communication loop. A PCP sends a patient for a suspicious lesion. The dermatologist evaluates it, but does that PCP hear back efficiently? Does the referring provider have confidence that their patient is being well cared for? So when that loop works, when a referral communication is clear, timely, and professional, you don't just get one patient, you get a sustained referral relationship. So in dermatology specifically, there are some underutilized referral opportunities. Routine skin checks are one, partnering with primary care physicians on education materials for high-risk patients, transplant recipients, patients on immunosuppressants is another. And so the point is your referral network should be, if it's not already, a strategic asset. And so hopefully you are treating it like one. So this is one of the slides that I personally, especially being at Vital Interaction, feel most strongly about. So I want to spend a good minute here. In dermatology, recall isn't just a scheduling tactic, it's a clinical responsibility. Think about the patients who need annual skin checks, patients on systemic medications who need monitoring, patients who had a melanoma excised and need follow-up surveillance, or patients who started a new biologic and need that 3-month check-in. So when those patients fall out of a recall, when life gets busy and they forget, or your team doesn't have a reliable system to bring them back in, the consequences aren't just financial, there can be real clinical implications. So a strong recall system does 3 things. It keeps patients on track with their care plan. It reinforces to the patient that their ongoing skin health matters, not just when they're symptomatic. And it reduces loss to care, which is a problem in every specialty, but particularly impactful in dermatology. So the line I have up here is one I want you to remember. Recall is not just about bringing patients back. It's about protecting continuity, outcomes, and long-term patient relationships. And really, that's something that you should hopefully be saying to your team, your front desk team, say it to your MAs. When the whole team understands why recall really matters, not that it's just a task on the list, compliance goes up. I know this process in my former clinic was one of the ones that on an especially busy day, it was the first thing that the team always forgot. And once we, as the leadership team, did a better job of helping them understand how critical this is for just a great patient experience, the better adherence we had by the staff in keeping these processes going. So I want to also talk about personalization. Um, this is where a lot of practices either unlock something powerful or do it halfway and wonder why it isn't working. So the concept here is that human warmth plus automation, efficiency, not one or the other. So what does that actually look like? It means your messages are tailored to the patient's specific situation, a combination of their visit type, their diagnosis, their care plan, not a generic, hey, don't forget about your appointment text, something that feels like it came from your practice or even their specific provider specifically. It also means respecting how patients want to be reached and when. Some patients want a text, some want email, and some want a phone call. So some want to hear from you at 7 a.m., others at 7 p.m. So taking all of that into account. And so now provider recorded videos. This is a powerful tool that very few practices are using to their full potential. When a patient gets a short video from their doctor explaining what to expect after their procedure in the provider's own words with their own face, it builds trust in a way that, a text message simply just can't. AI powered voice and video, we're seeing response rates 3 times higher compared to standard reminders. That's not a small difference, 3 times. That's the difference between a thriving recall system and one that's basically not working. So I want to give you some concrete examples of what this can actually look like in a dermatology practice. So potentially looking at videos of, what to expect during your cosmetic consultation. Imagine a patient who's booked their first filler appointment. They're excited, but a little bit nervous. Maybe they've been Googling a video from your injector sent the day before talking through exactly what will happen. That can reduce cancellations and set them up to be a loyal cosmetic patient. Another, what to expect after your procedure. Post-procedure instructions are critical in dermatology. Wound care after a Mohs surgery, downtime after a laser treatment. If those instructions arrive as a video, not just a printed sheet, the patient has already forgotten. Compliance goes up, and so does their confidence in your practice. So another one being, why does this follow-up matter, even if something seemed fine? This one's subtle and it's important. In dermatology, practices often feel better and assume they don't need to come back. Acne is clearing, the rash is gone, a short message, ideally a video, explaining why that follow-up is clinically meaningful can make a difference between a patient who completes their care and one who disappears. So next, I'll give you some concrete examples of what, a video like this, you can kind of see here on the screen what that potentially could look like coming to your patient, and a text message with a video embedded. But again, we've kind of got your what to expects here, while your follow-ups matter, things of that nature. And I'll go ahead and play an example for you too.
I'm so glad you've chosen us for your cosmetic consultation. We're excited to partner with you on your journey toward feeling and looking your best. During your consultation, we'll take the time to talk about your goals and understand what's most important to you. Whether you're interested in a subtle enhancement or a transformative change, we'll work together to create a customized plan that fits your unique needs. You can also expect a thorough evaluation where we'll review your medical history, discuss treatment options, and answer any questions you may have. My team and I are here to ensure you feel comfortable, informed, and confident every step of the way. Thank you for trusting Care Dermatology with your care. We can't wait to see you and help you achieve your aesthetic goals. See you soon.
Great. And so again, those videos can be used for use cases just like that, just like the example that you saw. We can also highlight this for, an annual skin screening or some sort of reactivation because it can be high value and underutilized. So thinking through, it's time for your annual skin screening. This is your bread and butter for medical dermatology. Every patient who's ever been seen in your practice is a candidate for this message, especially patients over 50, patients with a family history of melanoma, or patients with significant sun exposure history. Another idea is a well-timed personalized recall message. Again, ideally with a video from the provider. This can reactivate patients who haven't been in for 18 months or 2 years. And when they come back for a screening and you catch something early, that's not just revenue. It's, potentially a life saved. And again, why this follow-up matters even if you don't have concerns. So, this is a great message even for your cosmetic patients. Maybe it's the patient who had Botox 6 months ago. They look great. They feel great. So they're not thinking about coming back, but a well-crafted message with a human touch reminds them that maintaining results requires consistency. And so, the point of these examples is really this, that the message matters. Generic doesn't work, at least not well. But if you can get specific and relevant and personal, that's what you're going to see work. So no-shows, we can kind of move into talking about this because it is one of the most universal pain points I hear from dermatology, and really any specialty practice alike. So why do patients no-show in dermatology specifically? Busy schedules, yes. Work and family conflicts. But here's the one that's often overlooked, and that's perceived improvement. The rash cleared up, or the mole that they were worried about, now it just looks smaller. The acne is a little bit better. So they figure, I'll reschedule, and they never do. So the antidote is reducing friction and increasing the feeling that this appointment matters. Here's what the data supports is that a 3-touch reminder cadence, one reminder 7 days out, another one 48 hours to 72 hours before, and then another one the day of, or the night before if it's a morning appointment. So that combination, especially when it includes easy self-service options to confirm or reschedule, will dramatically reduce your no-show rates. Self-service really is key here. Patients don't want to call to reschedule. They want to click a button. Give them that option, and you'll likely keep more of those appointments on the books rather than losing them entirely. It's like they no-show at that point and they just get embarrassed and they figure I'll call them when I really need them or go find someone else. I've already embarrassed myself. Pre-visit information is also underrated. If a patient knows where to park, what entrance to use, what to bring, they're also less likely to bail out of anxiety or just logistical overwhelm. Also, post-visit surveys, when you close that loop fast, so a patient who had a friction-filled experience is more likely to disappear. A patient who gets a survey, responds, and hears back, that's a patient that you might keep. And so, I think a lot of people really simplify that a no-show happens in those just days leading up to the appointment. But if you are potentially addressing any concerns the patient had once they're leaving the office, really that decision of a no-show could be decided as they're walking out the door. They schedule the appointment because that's what they were told to do. But in the back of their mind, they might already know that they're not coming back. And so a survey may help you to rectify a situation that you were unaware of, driving down your no-show rate 6 months from now. So we've talked about a lot of good things. I really also want to talk about KPIs and dashboards and just, you can't optimize what you don't measure. I find that a lot of practices have data. They just don't have visibility into a way that data can drive decisions. So what should you be tracking? I recommend a few key metrics. One is new patient acquisition. Where are your new patients coming from? Are they online, referral, word of mouth? If you don't know the answer to that, you can't invest intelligently in growth. You're just kind of shooting in the dark. I talk to practices often that try 10 things at once. And so then they don't really know what worked, which marketing campaign, which Google ad, um, which visit from the physician liaisons to a group of, referring providers. If you're not tracking it and documenting it, then you don't really know what's working. So the other is your no-show and cancellation rate. What's your baseline? What's your target? 10% is a pretty reasonable benchmark, but knowing your number is the first step. Again, 10% being that benchmark. Practices can vary based on demographic of payers or, just where you live. Are you in a more urban or rural area? So get a good understanding of where you are, shoot for, an improvement, and just monitor for trend changes. Is it a specific provider who has a higher no-show rate, or do you have a specific location? I had one group that it was a specific appointment type, and we had figured out that there was a prior workflow where patients were being booked, but not actually told that they were being booked for like the annual skin screening a year from now. And so that specific appointment type had an outrageous no-show rate. We added in a pre-appointment, message a month before, giving the patient more of a heads up, even calling out, hey, you may not remember booking this appointment. Please let us know if this time doesn't work for you. And we were able to drive down that no-show rate dramatically for that specific appointment type where we just had a former workflow issue. Recall response rate is another of the patients who are due for a follow-up. What percentage of that actually books? If that number's low, your recall system probably needs work. Your patient retention rate, are patients coming back? How many active patients have you seen more than once in the past 12 to 18 months? Another one, revenue per patient visit. Break that down, cosmetic versus medical. Those are going to be two very different numbers, most likely. And understanding that breakdown helps you make smart decisions about where to invest your communication efforts. Some practices that we talk to, they just have general capacity needs where they just are not utilizing their physicians' full schedules. And they want to reactivate everything from annual skin screenings to potential surgical patients to cosmetic. Other practices, they're booked out pretty far. And so, as insurance reimbursements decline, looking at driving the higher revenue yielding visits are more important to practices who maybe have a higher utilization rate. So figuring out what your priorities are to help with that, where your goals should be and where you should be investing your communication efforts. So the goal isn't to drown in dashboards. It's really to have 3 or 4 key numbers that tell you at a glance what systems are working. Data without the ability to make a decision from that, it's just a number. And so deciding what are those 3 or 4 important metrics that are going to help you to drive business decisions are the ones that you should be monitoring and know like the back of your hand. So this slide, I want every practice administrator and operations lead on the call to hopefully tattoo onto their brain. And that is document, test, and share. So here's what I see in high-performing practices. They treat their patient communication strategy like a product. They test reminder wording. They try different timing. They'll A/B test subject lines on emails. And they document what works. So why does this matter? Because what works for one patient population, it might not work for another. A cosmetic heavy practice might see great response rates to video messages. Medical dermatology practice with a lot of older patients might find that phone calls outperform texts for recall. So you won't know until you test. You won't be able to improve if you don't document. And the last piece is share. Share what is working with your team. Celebrate the wins. When a recall campaign reactivates 40 patients in a month, that's worth talking about in a staff meeting. It connects the team's day-to-day work to the actual outcomes that are generating. That staff buy-in piece again is so important. These are likely going to be workflows that are going to take some sort of effort from everyone, from maybe a scribe or someone in the clinical department setting that recall, or helping prep what kind of communication do patients who are coming in for a Mohs consultation need, or what does the patient need to know after they have Botox for the first time. It's going to trend from those more clinically minded people to the front desk who are, hopefully you're automating these messages and your front desk team isn't queuing them out, but they may be answering a phone call from a patient who has a question from something that they've received. Or they may be setting the recall in the system that the clinical team has told them to. And so working together is going to be key. And so celebrating the wins, helping with that buy-in, helping them to understand that hopefully unified goal of what you're trying to achieve is going to help with this process. Continuous improvement isn't just a business principle, it's a culture. And the practices that have built that culture outperform the ones that don't consistently. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. I also talk really fast. So again, keep the questions coming. But I want to make sure that you leave with something actionable. And so let's talk about what the next 90 days could look like. In your first 30 days, the focus should be on assessment and getting some quick wins. So audit your online presence. Is your Google profile current? Is your website mobile friendly? Establish what those baseline KPIs are: no-show rate, recall response, new patient volume are some ideas again. And identify your biggest communication gap. Is it recall? Is it reminders or post-visit follow-up? So again, first 30 days, you're going to audit and you're going to set your foundation. Days 31 to 60, hopefully you start building. Implement or refine your 3-touch reminder cadence, launch or clean up your recall system. Focus on patients who are overdue for annual skin checks first. If you have a provider who's willing, record 1 or 2 short videos for your most common visit types. And then days 61 through 90, you should be optimizing and tweaking, looking at your data. What's working? What isn't? Run your first A/B test on a reminder message or a recall campaign, and share your results with the team. So none of this requires a massive investment. It requires intention, consistency, and a willingness to measure. So, as we wrap up, I want to take a breath here. We've covered a lot, from online presence, referrals, recall, personalization, no-show reduction, KPIs, and experimentation. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that's okay. You don't have to. In fact, I highly recommend that you don't do this all at once. I'd highly, highly encourage you not to try that. I know you can get on these webinars or, sit in a talk at a meeting, and now you've got 20 ideas and you want to do them all. It's so important to pick just a couple to start with. So pick one thing, the one area where there's a gap. Maybe it's your recall system. Maybe it's your reminder cadence. Maybe it's your Google profile, which hasn't been updated in, 2 years or more. And start there. Do it well and measure it, and then move on to the next thing. Doing 1 or 2 things exceptionally well is going to move the needle a lot faster than doing 5 to 10 things halfway. So the practices that improve the fastest are not the ones that try to change everything simultaneously. They're the ones that focus and execute, and build from those wins with their team. So this is going to bring us to our Q&A discussion here. So I want this to be a real conversation. Again, I know we've got a few questions that have already come in, but now's a great time. What questions do you have? What scenarios are you dealing with in your practice right now that we can dig in together with the time that we have left? And so let's see what we've got going on here. Before we dive into those, I just want to call out, if you think of something after today, please reach out. My number and email are right here on the slide. I love these conversations. The best ideas I've ever gotten about how to help practices often come from practitioners who are willing to tell me exactly where things are breaking down. So please don't be shy. So let's dive into, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Brittany. You were about to get started.
Yeah, we'll dive into a couple of these questions. So first one I'm seeing is, what would be a good starting point for improving a particularly high no-show rate? And so, we covered it a little bit. The first thing is, obviously measuring it. Sounds like you have a particularly high no-show rate. So I like to go a step further and look at, again, is it a specific provider, appointment type, or location that's driving that? Because that can change how you tackle it. So, for this use case, let's assume it's just a broadly general high no-show rate in the clinic. Nothing in particular stands out. It's all pretty flat amongst your different factors. And so it would be looking at your cadence. So, are you, again, taking a patient preference into account? Are you using, at least 3 touch points, mixed modalities of communications? Again, some patients are going to prefer text, some email, some phone call. So highly, highly recommend using, again, at least 3 touch points, mixed modality of communication. If you're already doing that, then that's where we're in that optimization phase. And that's where, doing some A/B testing on, what if I change this touch point that's an email to a text message? Monitor that for a month or 2. Does your no-show rate change? So hopefully that helps. Happy to talk about it offline if there's kind of some specific circumstances around that. So moving on to the next one. What is one low-cost improvement dermatology practices can start using immediately to boost patient retention without adding more workload to the team? So if you don't want to add more workload to the team, then you really do have to automate it. All different PM systems have different abilities to add a recall into the system. And many communication tools out there, Vital Interaction being one of those, have the ability to read those recalls and automatically send messages out to those patients. Something else that I would recommend looking into, without knowing your exact definition of, low cost, is looking into a true reactivation software. And so recalls are a great tool. They do require the staff to input those into your practice management system. Reactivations are a little bit different. That involves data mining. There are a couple companies, again, out there who do that. Again, Vital Interaction is one of those, but essentially scanning your system, looking for patients who have specific diagnoses, who don't maybe have a recall in the system. Maybe the staff just forgot, and letting them know proactively without any staff intervention that they're due for care based on their diagnosis. And so, you say low cost. I like to call out that, when you're looking at solutions like that, generally speaking, the value of bringing in even just 1 or 2 patients is going to cover any sort of cost that would be associated to something like that. So definitely worth looking into if you feel like your team are drowning in work and don't have time to run reports looking for lost and overdue patients, because that really is the only alternative, is a manual pulling lists out of the practice management software, looking for patients who are lapsed and overdue, to prompt them to come back in. So, how can I communicate, or how can I get leadership to want to buy in on communication tools? So I don't know what your exact role is in the office, if you're a team member or some sort of department lead. But, partnering with a vendor to kind of help you build a support use case for, a more robust communication tool is something that, we are always happy to do. And I say we as, a, a vendor in the communication sphere. And so, sitting down with, a vendor or two, deciding what communication tool makes the most sense. I guarantee you that whoever you're working with would be more than happy to help you build a use case to show, yes, this is, what the communication tool entails. This is the lift. This is the implementation. This is the cost. But here's the value that it would bring back into the clinic. And so, but really, getting buy-in is also just part of culture. And so I often like to work backwards and align on a goal first before bringing a solution. So if you can get them to agree that there is a goal and there's a communication tool that can help accomplish that goal, is probably going to help you to be more successful in that conversation. Next question, what if we've tried recalls and it's not working? So it would depend on, when you say you've tried recalls, I'm interested to know what you've tried. Has it been, manual phone calls from the staff? Are you using a communication tool for that? Similar to appointment reminders, we recommend multiple touch points over a, 30 to 45 day window, mixed modality of text, email, and phone. Again, I believe I called out earlier, we see a 3 times higher response rate to messages that embed some sort of, provider message, whether that be the provider's voice over the phone or provider video via text or email. Patients will see those providers or see those messages from their specific provider, and they tend to just take that question a little bit more seriously. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you, Craig. I also see that you answered one of the other questions. So I think I have addressed all of the questions that are currently in the Q&A. If you think of anything else, please feel free to, type that in, while those maybe come in or don't. Just a few questions that, I would like to leave you guys with to brainstorm following our session today. And it actually bleeds into some of the questions that we asked, is anyone dealing with a particularly high no-show rate and not sure where to start? Hopefully I've given you some ideas for that. Are there practices here that have tried recall and found that it's not working? Again, we've addressed that. I would love to troubleshoot that with you. If you want to connect with me, again, my contact information is up here. I'd love to know what you've tried to see how we can optimize that with your current tools. And so, and then we've also got, some questions on, getting leadership bought in. And so we've addressed that too. So again, thank you all for being here today. I hope this was worth your time. And I look forward to hopefully connecting after this webinar.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for all this valuable content. And thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. We'll be in touch very soon with a recording of today's session, so you can share with anyone on your team who might be interested in this content or couldn't join us. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your week ahead. Take care.
Bye.